Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Lion, the Way, and the War, where we talk about Jesus, his church, and the spiritual battle that surrounds us all. My name is Craig Allison, and I'll be your host. All right, well, joining me today is Jacob Haustein, and he's from Saudi Daisy, Tennessee. Currently, though, he's residing at 609 Houston Street, so if you have a problem with anything that he says, you can track him down there, 609 Houston Street, Chattanooga, Tennessee, that address is the Christian Student Center, and that's where you serve as a student ambassador. Jacob is studying civil engineering at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, and he's hoping to pursue a career in geotechnical engineering. I have really no idea what that is, but I'm going to talk to you about that in just a minute. In his spare time, Jacob enjoys reading and playing the guitar, rock climbing, and competing in jiu-jitsu, karate, some type of martial arts, right?
Yeah, those are very different.
Brazilian? Is there like a...
I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, yeah.
Okay. I don't know what the difference between Brazilian and American jiu-jitsu, or is there an American jiu-jitsu?
There is an American jiu-jitsu, and basically what they've done to make American jiu-jitsu is they've kind of incorporated American wrestling into it. So they've kind of just merged two martial arts.
Okay. Welcome to the show, Jacob.
It's good to be here.
So let's get some stuff. The intro there. What is geotechnical engineering? What would you be doing as a job?
A gross basically.
Okay, so we already have a problem. You don't even know what it is.
I'm gonna describe it in the simplest way I can. Okay. It is, I will go to different job sites and I will look at the dirt and I'll pick it up and then I'll throw it down and then I'll look at the guy that's trying to build there and be like, "Yep, it's good. It's foundation."
Okay.
So, or I mean, there's cooler stuff they can do with it. They use it for like quarries and they use it for.
But basically, you're just looking at dirt.
Yeah, I'm looking at like how the quality of the foundation. And so like if you're trying to build on a mountainside, I'll be like, nope, this is susceptible to rock slides, so you can't build here.
Okay, all right. So that makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah,
there.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the geology.
Yeah. Is that something you like, or is it just?
Well, I'm a big fan of rock climbing, so for some reason I have an interest in like geology and rocks. So yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. Not really. I'm already bored.
It's boring, but like
out of my mind.
I don't know why I like it, but
why
I do.
Why would you want to do that? I have no idea.
Money.
But I mean, if I ever build something and I need to know if it's going to be structural, that is an important job.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't have a city without it.
Right. I get it. It's just not anything that I would want to spend my day doing.
Yeah.
Which is weird because so you like this other stuff that's totally opposite of that, like Brazilian jiu-jitsu. How is that related to geotechnical?
It's not in any way.
Okay. Or guitar playing?
Not related.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe reading.
Yeah.
Do you read about geotechnical stuff? Because if you do, I'm going to be really concerned.
Not geotech stuff, but like
other than school. Like you have to read it for
rock, school. Like rock climbing. I'll read like rock climbing books and mountaineering books, and they'll describe the different rocks and like the different formations that you'll have, like sandstone out in Chattanooga.
Yeah,
we have big sandstone cliffs, and if you're a sandstone climber, sandstone has a steeper terrain than most other rocks. So I mean, I'll read about like rock quality and whatever.
Do you hear those thumps right now? Those are people passing out from boredom as they hit their head.
I have a very weird broad of hobbies.
All right, so I'm sorry, I'm just messing with you. Let's talk about, this is your first year as a student ambassador.
It is.
Okay, so what does that mean exactly?
Student ambassador, I live on campus at the student center, and I am essentially a caretaker of the CSC, and I do outreach for the CSC, and I collect students to try to get them there. And then when they are there, we encourage their spiritual growth by providing small groups, devos, and it's it's a mission field. It's like you on any other mission trip, just on a college campus.
Okay, so you grew up in the church.
Yes.
Like spiritually, your mom and dad are faithful, and did you consider like one of the Christian universities? Like why UTC? Why a secular university instead of like Faulkner or Freed-Hardeman or one of the other like Christian universities?
I never considered a Christian university.
Okay.
There's only one other school I applied to, which was App State, and I wanted to pursue, what was it? I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was some sort of environmental degree, and I wanted to become a forest firefighter, but I kind of changed my mind because they don't make enough.
Okay.
And so I changed my mind and I decided on engineering. And then my mom kind of pushed me to do the 2 years free at Chat State and then transfer to UTC.
Yep.
And so that was the plan. And then I did 1 year at Chat State, found out Corey was going to UTC. So I wanted to kind of follow along with Corey, and I just transferred early.
Okay, and Corey is your friend?
Corey's my friend, yeah. Okay. We've been friends for a very long time.
Okay. So this is now you're a junior,
I'm
right?
a junior, yeah.
This year. So started doing the student ambassador at a Christian Student Center, and I know what that job entails, obviously, because I used to be the campus minister there. Now you're working underneath Harrison Gibbs.
I am, yeah.
How's that working out for you?
Harrison, there are certain people that are meant for certain jobs, and sometimes they never find them, and I think Harrison has found his.
That's I would agree with that statement.
I think he is meant for what he does.
He would call me pretty frequently over the years and ask me if I had any plans to retire or step out of that role.
I really wanted that
role. So yeah, he's been actively pursuing it for a while now. I can't think of a better person to step in and do that job.
He's perfect. Like, I mean, even Preston. Have you've heard him teach music before?
I teach music?
Yeah.
No, I've not heard Harrison teach music.
No, Preston.
Oh, Preston, yeah.
Yeah, he was going to college for engineering, right?
Yeah.
And decided it wasn't meant for him, and then he found music education. It's what he's meant for.
Yeah, right.
It couldn't be better.
Yeah. So it's a good match.
Yeah, and I think the same thing of Harrison. I think that there's no other job in the world meant for Harrison.
I think he preached last Sunday for the Welcome Week Sundays. All the students came back, and he in his prayer he talked about his dream job that he had found, and that was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. So geotechnical engineering is your dream job then?
Yeah.
Okay.
For now.
I don't know why I want to keep circling back to that for some reason. So sorry. All right. I want to talk a little bit about, we're going to get into some, real stuff here, because I don't often have active college students on this show. It's usually, folks that are a bit older. But I think that there's a lot of people that need to hear the type of stuff that we're going to talk about.
Okay.
I want to ask you to be completely honest and candid. Don't hold anything back.
Open book.
Okay. From a spiritual warfare type stance, and I know Harrison is going to be actually, I think he's going to be teaching a class this semester on spiritual warfare. Yep. When I have these discussions with people and I talk about, the term spiritual warfare, people it's kind of like this abstract thinking. It's like, yes, we know that Satan is here in the world and he tempts us, he tempts people, he tries, and it's this just sort of like intellectual abstract thinking. But there's the other aspect to this where I think Satan is attacking people, specifically your age demographic, doing everything that he can to pull us away in overt, blatant kind of ways. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to talk about what that looks like and how that manifests itself on the campuses at secular universities, and specifically UTC. So just open kind of dialogue here. Just whatever you think about those things.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack about that at a secular university.
Right. So let's unpack it.
So, I mean,
how is Satan attacking you guys right now?
at the CSC currently, I mean,
or not just necessarily at the CSC, but just
at UTC,
campus wide, yeah. Or in your own experiences.
I mean, it's different for everybody, obviously, but like I've seen a lot of people around campus that we're built for relationships,
right?
Right. In Genesis, the first problem was that man was alone,
right?
And iron sharpens iron, and there's definitely like we see a lot of people kind of hide away, not really go into social groups, and that's a big detriment to them, and he's using that in a way where they're kind of in their own head, and it grows and grows and grows. And we also have the other side of that where people are going into social groups that they don't belong in or very damaging to them. I think those are the two biggest ways that he's using it right now is separation and like a damaging inclusion.
How specifically, how is Satan doing that though?
It's just people giving into their desires, right?
So like fleshly type stuff?
Yeah, it is. I mean, we're not seeing him going around and like possessing kids on campus,
right.
But I mean, if he's using something, it's fleshly desires on campus by far.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know you're probably more familiar with the UTC, like statistics are. How many kids at UTC are Christian? Do you know?
Percentage wise?
Yeah.
It's not a majority. I can tell you that.
Okay.
And it has trended downwards over the years.
I bet it has.
Ironically, UTC, the history of University of Tennessee at Chattanooga was founded on it was a Christian based. I mean, it was founded by and had strong Christian roots in it.
It was a Methodist university, right?
I believe it was, yeah. But if you're just going to take a random, just an entire population sample, you're going to see the percentage of active people that are declaring that they are Christian, active participants, in the Christian faith. It's trended downwards for sure.
I mean, I don't want to necessarily there's a lot of accountability that has to go into like Satan's success at UTC, where even like Christian groups that we have at UTC are not inclusive enough to allow. They don't make struggling people feel welcome,
right?
And they don't make. Just new people sometimes don't even feel welcome. I don't necessarily see cliques as inherently bad. It's a like the church. It's a like-minded group of people,
right,
with a similar goal in mind. Yeah. And when a clique becomes damaging is when it's not inclusive. It's not allowing people in. And I definitely think that a lot of Christian groups on campus at UTC have this major struggle, and there's a lack of self-reflection there. Like if they were that person, how would they want to be treated in that group? Yeah. And I would say maybe that is the biggest issue by far. It's kind of a lack of outreach, and then when there is that outreach and they do come and show up, it's a lack of inclusion.
Yeah. So there's a lot of exclusivity that's going on. The people that are proclaiming a faith background, that they're Christians, are really more along the lines of a social club, and you have to fit this certain paradigm in order to gain access to our social club. I
don't want to say anything specifically, but even when struggling people come in there and they'll say something that's a bit, to a Christian we might find offensive.
Right.
I don't want to say they don't know any better, because they do inherently, but it is a struggle of theirs that needs to be considered. And a lot of times when people find out about that, they don't really want to hang out with them anymore.
Well, and you said, they inherently they know, or does it matter whether or not they know? and they say something that might...
I didn't want to take like any accountability off of them, because there's still an accountability on the people who do struggle with things.
Right.
So, and I mean, like inherently they do know something, but it is a struggle, and it should be considered.
Okay. So what do we need to be doing? Like I mean, obviously this applies to the church, but specifically like for the Christian students, where you're dealing with other college students who have, probably a lot of different, coming from a lot of different backgrounds. They have an idea of what Christians are, and mostly it's not positive stuff. It's negative. It's, you're judgmental, you're exclusive. And it seems like that what you're saying, and I don't want to put words into your mouth, is that that's probably an accurate depiction. It is factual that we do as a whole exclude people because they don't think like us, they don't agree with where we're at, and so it's like, you're a lost cause, and just stay out there where you belong, and we're gonna keep our pristine little environment here, and you're not really welcome. I mean, is that accurate?
Yeah, we do see it. I don't think like the judgmental aspect of it, right? I feel like a lot of people will use that as a cope to like not go and do it. Like a lot of non-Christians kind of hear that and they use it as a cliche to not even get involved. And so I do think that there is a job on us to go out and, find those people and show them that that's not true for everybody.
Are you suggesting that we change our narrative?
Change our narrative?
Yeah. Not biblically, not but no. As far as our narrative towards accepting the fact that maybe we are riding the edge of that, or maybe just we've jumped all off the face of the cliff and
like
just
the CSC in specific, or
sure, why not?
So if we look at the CSC in itself, we have a clique, and like I said earlier, I don't think cliques are inherently bad. You're going to hang out with who you hang out with, but when that circle is closed, then we have a problem. And so the CSC, I've heard it from a few other people where they feel like they haven't been welcomed into the CSC, just because maybe they've shown up late, right? And there are a lot of new people in this group, but this group of new people has closed itself off now, and they were late to the party. And in that aspect, I don't think we're doing that intentionally. I think that maybe there's a bit of ignorance behind that, and that it is our duty to continue in self-reflection. Self-reflection is something that does not stop, and we need to remember that, hey, new person in, open it up.
Yeah. And at the heart of, I could ask, why did you want to be a student ambassador? Because this kind of deals with, hopefully, you want to be a student ambassador to do the opposite of what kind of you're describing that we're all susceptible to. It's not just the student center or any other organized campus religious affiliation, because you've got the different affiliations. You've got a Catholic center, you've got the Baptist center, whatever. So not just the collegiate, but churches also, the churches of Christ, where we can kind of form our own cliques, and we are closed off, and we would love to have visitors, but if you're like too far beyond whatever's in our mind as appropriate, that we're going to be chasing after you and trying to bring you to Christ. What I feel like you're saying here is there's like a set of maybe internal standards that we have that are worth pursuing somebody, and then if you cross too far over into, I don't know, I'm fill in the blank, we're going to be more standoffish.
Yeah. There were a few questions in there. Do you want why I became a student ambassador first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's talk about that first. Because I think it's related to what we're talking about.
Okay. Well, yeah. For me personally, the way I got introduced to the CSC was Christian Turner, and he was really encouraging me to go there. And so when I was at Chat State, my first semester, he invited me, and I showed up and for Tuesday Night Devos, and that was really the only thing I showed up for. And you were campus minister at the time, and that year I had really enjoyed the Devos that you were given, and I found them very impactful for me, and I kind of kept desiring to come back. And at that time at Chat State, growing up, I grew up in the church, but I never really had my own faith, and I think that's a big issue that we see in college.
Right, sure.
And when you go off to college, you start facing more challenging questions, and you have to know answers for those. Yeah. And I think we see that now with like this whole deconstruction movement, where people are really questioning their faith, and they don't really find answers. They just, when they can't answer it, they kind of let it go. And so I was kind of at this point at Chat State where I was really questioning things, and I couldn't really come up with answers. And then the CSC kind of challenged me in a way. Mm-hmm. And then I started going to Central, and Central really started to challenge me in a way where it wasn't let it go, it was find answers. Yeah. And so it inspired me to do my own research and, in a way, find my own faith. And the CSC was very impactful for me in that. And all the essays, Ty, Preston, Christian, they helped me, they challenged me. Like, Ty will debate me. Mm-hmm. Preston he'll give a lot of insightful answers. And in a way, I felt that I owed the CSC what it had given me. And I would love to, in a way, give other students that same thing it gave me.
Okay, yeah. So there seems to be, and this is all wrapped together, what I've seen in my 12 years as a campus minister, and then being an active part of churches growing up. There is, and I'm going to apologize right off the bat because I know this is going to offend a lot of people. Okay, but I'm speaking the truth. I'm fixing to drop a truth bomb on you. We don't hold back on this podcast. Right. If you like it, fine. If you don't like it, I guess, I don't know, email me or deal with it, whatever. Church people, for the most part, don't want to do the deep dives. They don't want to dig. And so when the hard
100% agree. Yeah.
So when the hard questions come up, they don't want to deal with them because and to me what that says is your own faith is lacking. You're scared to pursue certain topics because you're afraid that it's going to somehow expose your faith and you're going to find it lacking. And if people would wake up and I shouldn't say wake up because that's a disrespectful thing, but if people would open their eyes and see that if they truly pursue knowledge of God and the Bible, they're not going to be disappointed. They're going to find what they need to find in Scriptures. There's not a trapdoor they're going to fall through. And the thing that I hate about deconstruction, we've lost some members over this, is they don't dig deep enough. They do the shallow surface thing, and they ask all these questions, and it scares them, and then they're done. The CSC, at least while I was there, and I think Harrison is going to continue this. We're not afraid of your questions, mm-hmm. and we're not afraid to dig, and we're not afraid to pursue it wherever it takes us.
And Central, in a way, like, it was what was very encouraging to me is like the people that I would talk to did not avoid hard questions, and when they didn't know, they told me, mm-hmm. I don't know, and when you get that answer, it kind of inspires you to like find out why. Yeah. Like what's hard about this? Yeah. And then you get different outlooks on things, and it inspires you to dig more and more when you get different outlooks.
Right. So, kind of coming back here to how Satan is using our current culture, and this is part of our current culture. Mm-hmm. This is you mentioned the deconstruction. That's huge. It's been huge for probably the last 36 months or so. Yeah. He seems to be using that, especially in your age demographic, that late teens to early mid-20s. So it's a younger demographic. I think on college campuses too, with all of the technology that we have access to, it's just a constant bombardment of questions that make you doubt on one side, and then the attack coming from the other side is the inundation and bombardment of access to the world in all sorts of mm-hmm. areas. I mean, it's I'm teaching a class on pornography tonight.
Yep.
It's ubiquitous. You can't escape it. And the statistics on it are absolutely terrifying.
Yep.
When we stop. And so for the college student coming in, and they're having culture coming at them from both of those sides, I step back and I look at that and I'm thinking, this is spiritual warfare at a level that I don't know that we've seen before. Maybe we have, but that's how I see Satan operating on college campuses. And so that's kind of why I ask questions, is like, because you're there in the midst of it, you're talking to people, you are a college student. Am I completely off base, or is that part of what's going on today?
I mean, yeah, it's definitely an involvement of it. Yeah, there's a lot of, like, it's misuse of God's intent. And so, like, you're teaching a class on pornography today, that is a manipulation of an intent on relationships. And I think that there's
not my teaching it. That's not a manipulation.
No. The
Satan
pornography,
yes. Yeah.
And I mean, pornography is a huge deal on UTC. I mean, a secular society, pornography is, it's killing them.
It's in the church.
It is in the church.
Yeah. The church doesn't escape it.
And it's a manipulation on intent for relationship that God has designed. And when we look at relationships, we're built for relationships, and a part of the relationships is, sex and identity. Mm-hmm. And I can't relate to you in any other way than a man to man.
Right.
And I can't relate to you as woman to man.
Right.
So, I mean, gender is this huge part of relationships.
Yeah.
And we can't escape that. And so on one side, we'll see it at UTC, where people try to act as if gender doesn't matter in a relationship. Yeah. And, they'll kind of almost as if they're a neuter, right?
Yeah.
Or we have the extreme opposite, which we see at UTC as well, where they're basically, everybody that they see is, they're constantly, like, sizing up their next sexual partner.
Yeah.
And these are two denials of something that God has intended. And for the first one, denying your gender, like, that's something that's deeply rooted within your heart. And to deny this, you're attempting at something, and you're trying very hard to no outcome. It's impossible for me to relate to you as woman to man. And I can try as hard as I want, but there will never be that outcome. Right. And that almost makes you feel meaningless. Like, I work so hard and I get nothing.
But let me interrupt you here. So let's say that I identify as a woman. Okay, that's even though biologically I'm a man, I identify as a woman. You saying what you just said, not being able to relate to me any way other than a man to a man, because biologically I'm not a woman. You say that, you're anathema now in our culture. You're going to get a ton of pushback, and you are the person with the issue, because you're not accepting of that, and it's being spun almost as, that is an anti-Christian way to relate to a person, because it's not with love and not understanding and that's where we're at now, right?
Well, I mean, I know I can say this to you without offending you, right? But if I was sitting next to somebody that was struggling with this, I would come at it in a more gentle sense, and I would understand that this is a struggle that they have, and we would talk about it, right? I don't want to, like, exclude somebody who actually struggles with that,
right? Which,
I mean, we see a lot of people that are scared of that, which is why a lot of people view Christians as judgmental, is because they're scared to take that on.
Well, but I guess what I'm saying is why would you be at fault for not being able to relate to somebody in the way other than God had created them? Why is that problematic for you? Why does that become a problem for you to express that? Because are you not entitled to that very same freedoms that are expected from us? As you follow what I'm saying here?
Yeah, I think Satan uses this as a way to dehumanize relationships intended by God, and it puts people into a sort of living death, and which is why we see a huge skyrocket of depression in modern society. Mm-hmm. And I mean, in the other term, where people are constantly sizing up their sexual partner, you see a manipulation of like intended relationships that God has, where there is no such thing as casual sex. And
what do you mean by that?
You like meaningless sex.
Okay.
You always leave a little bit of yourself with that person,
right?
And
as much as the world wants to say it's casual, it's not casual.
It's not casual.
Yeah.
And you put, like, you can't get rid of the maleness and the femaleness of gender identity, and so sex strikes you like straight to the core.
Yeah.
And it is denying that sex is something that is designed by God to leave a little piece of you with somebody, like the connection
right.
that you have with somebody.
Yeah. So how prevalent is this ideology on college campuses?
On college campus, I mean, I think that is one of two of the biggest issues on college campus: gender identity, or we'll just say relationships as a whole. Those two like extremes are one of the two most prevalent things on college campus.
You know, when we talk about, you know, just foundational kind of stuff, you know, your biology, how is this not? And this is like a kind of a redundant, or not redundant, but just an obvious question. How do we see that from a Christian perspective? How do we not see that as an attack by Satan to attack the very basics of what God has created? Because if he can confuse us on that, then everything's on the table at that point.
I mean, even like, let's look at humans throughout history. There is a desire for humans to worship. There is a spiritual aspect to human that is undeniable. And this voice that we hear in our I don't want to say like brain, but like we're led by some sort of voice. And that voice doesn't necessarily lead us directly to Christianity, which that is the answer.
Mm-hmm.
But other people will fill this void that they feel with other forms of spirituality, which also leaves them feeling empty. And that's, I think, is the second biggest problem that we see on campus, is like a manipulation of spirituality, and where like we don't go to the true God, and like look at like paganism, the tarot cards, whatever that religion is. Yeah. Like there's some sort of void that they're filling with that. And it is again, I think that anything that is not under the Christian doctrine is a living death.
Yeah. So there's a manipulation taking place where, you know, and I think about this. I think about Elmer's glue.
Mm-hmm.
It's just everybody's like whiplash here from this. What? Elmer's glue. Okay. What's coming next? Elmer's glue is designed for a specific purpose, right? But there's some people that take that Elmer's glue, and rather than sticking things together, gluing things, they sniff it and use it for a purpose that it was never, ever intended for. And somewhere along the way, as we extrapolate that example and superimpose that on all this stuff that we're talking about here, and the crisis across the college campuses that we see, somewhere along the way, Satan has been able to get in between the things that God created and the intended purpose, and insert himself and confuse us and say, no, it's actually
what you want.
Right. Try it this way. And, you know, so here we are, and it's amazing to me just how quickly and effectively Satan has been able to do that. And so I'm left here wanting to talk to people that are in the midst of you know, the demographic that is facing this more than anybody else, and ask the question, how has Satan been able to do this so rapidly and quickly and effectively that it has completely changed a culture, a generation? It has changed a generation's thinking, because you have probably more people your age that would kind of align themselves with, no, we need to be supportive and celebratory and say, you know, this is, your truth is your truth. And we have to respect that, because that's what a Christian should do. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, no, that's not what a Christian should do. We need to speak truth in love, But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. Backing up, how has Satan been able to do this? Like, what's the format that he's used?
I mean, I just think that it's a way that philosophy has changed over time, and like secular philosophers have sort of presented these ideas that seem quite pleasing to the uneducated mind, and it just has grown from there, where like modern philosophy, Christianity is a private matter. But if we look at like Judaism in the time of Christ, that wasn't, like, religion was your culture. And we look at now, Christianity is personal. And in it becoming personal, it's become, hence personal, it's less public, and
right.
It seems to have just become weaker in people, and it grows from there.
Yeah, so postmodernistic thinking was moving at a certain pace, and the expectations from like a decade to the next decade. And we can go back and we can see all of the cultural shifts in thinking and philosophies and all of that. And there seems to have been this standard progression that kind of matches a timeline.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to, and you may not know or have the answer to this. I'm just throwing stuff out there to see what sticks on the wall. It appears that the current postmodernistic philosophy has been supercharged and has advanced so much more rapidly than historical past movements and shifting in cultural thinking. So here we are now from the years 2000 to 2025 as we approach the 25th, and there's this exponential increase in the collective mindset of a culture that has taken place a lot more quickly than in past times. And so that's kind of where I'm getting at. It's like, what's changed that it's happened so fast and so collectively? I mean, is it technology? Is it advancement of? Are all of our social media apps? Is it Hollywood? Is it what?
Well, I mean,
like what is it that from the college age group that you guys are seeing and being inundated with this all the time? Is it person to person, or?
I think technology is like anything else that exists, where like too much of it is bad.
Right.
I don't think technology is inherently evil. I think it can be used for good in many cases. But I think that same question could, you're teaching a class on this, but like porn. When we look, like, if you get your phone, you're going to be exposed to porn. You had mentioned that not too long ago. Mm-hmm. And that same question could be like, why has porn become, like, why has technology, like, let it, like, cause that? Like, why is Satan so successful there? Right? Mm-hmm. I just think that it's constantly man finding the easiest way out, and that's something that's been repeated throughout history. And now it's more accessible.
Okay. So I'm going to, we could keep talking about this.
Like, look at Nietzsche, right? Friedrich Nietzsche.
Right.
That was a philosophy that was very desirable by people. And instead of, facing Christianity's hard. And instead of, like, accepting Christianity as the truth, they went with the easy option. And Nietzsche became quite popular. And it's the same thing with technology,
Well, I think it's certainly, Satan having a pretty good grasp on human nature.
Yeah.
And where
he knows where you're weak.
Yeah, absolutely. Shifting gears just a little bit here, because this is like this stuff here I could talk about on and on and on. Why are so many college students not faithful any longer? They get to college and they don't stay plugged in. They leave church. What's happening there, in your opinion?
I think that there is a part to blame on both campus ministries and college students, in the aspect that campus ministries aren't doing enough to go and find those people, and the aspect that those people aren't reaching out to campus ministries or aren't actively looking for them. And so it's just, it's just unfortunate.
I mean, I know a ton over the course of my decade of campus ministry experience, and I know a ton of families across the Southeast that, when I say no, I know of, because I get those connections there. These were kids that have been raised in the church, and as soon as they get on campus, they're gone. They don't come to church. As a matter of fact, I had parents that would show up to come visit, and I would see their kid at our church with their mom and dad for the first time while they were in town,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know who their kid was, and so that was an awkward conversation because they thought their kid was here in church, and they weren't. And some parents, I had a conversation with a couple who said they were members of the church, and I said, we would love to have your daughter come and visit us and get plugged into the student center because we have all of this stuff going on. And the parents looked at me and said, well, we'll see about that. So it's kind of a push off. And I mean, I read in between the lines. I knew that they weren't going to be here on Sunday, and she wasn't here on Sunday. And so I knew that was going to happen. So certainly, there's elements that are taking place before the kid ever gets to college that can set them up to walking away.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that completely explains why we have a mass exodus of Christians. And I use that term loosely because, they get to college and they walk away from their faith and they don't come back. That's the sad part of this.
I mean, raised Christian,
Mm-hmm.
when you go to college, you are smacked in the face with just secular society right off the bat, probably more so than ever you have ever been.
Yeah.
And the areas that you are weak in are going to be targeted.
Yeah.
And you're gonna notice it. And when you give into that, it gets weaker, and it gets harder to fight. And so trying to feel accepted when you're actually struggling with something is difficult. And it's the hard road, and a lot of people take the easy road.
Yeah. There's a lot of church leaders that listen to this podcast, and you have a platform right now as a college student to speak directly to a lot of the church leaders. What do you say to them? What do they need to be doing at their respective congregations to not only be drawing students in, but once they're there, keeping them in church, having a place where they want to come back and be part of a congregation,
Mm-hmm.
so they can grow their faith and all of that. What advice do you have for them?
I mean, I don't think there's any better advice than to meet them where they are at. And
what does that mean, though?
So,
I mean, because I hear that a lot, but it's like, okay, so, but what does that actually mean?
It's an aspect of self-reflection where you understand that they are struggling with something, and you can self-reflect and be like, hey, I've struggled with things before, and how would I want to be treated when I'm in this situation?
But how does a church leader know what a person is struggling with? I mean, we're just talking about, just the average person rolls in and there's something going on. They're like, well, I'm not coming back here, or I am coming back here. I want to come back here.
You need to exaggerate on their strong points, right? So like, you need to get them connected super fast. So I know that we have a lot of new students, and yesterday at dinner in Devo, we had a guy walk in, and I was asking him very just general questions, favorite sports team, playing instruments or whatever, and kind of collecting this data about him. And then you know where, like, people with similar things that they like about that. And then, but you also need to know that person that they're setting up with, their background. And so, like, if they're a very strong believer, immediately push them that way, and they can grow this connection and this depth, and eventually ask those difficult questions and find stuff out about each other. Mm-hmm. And it's about, you need to know, you need to know your audience.
Yeah. First impressions are important.
First impressions are important.
So if as a church leader, I'm vastly interested and curious to know, let's throw Central Church of Christ on the chopping block here, mm-hmm. and offer my home congregation up as an example. What are we doing right? First impression. What are we getting wrong? What's attracting you to come back here, or maybe attracting you to look other places? And I don't know I don't know if that's you. You may be looking other places.
I think Central does an absolutely wonderful job at not avoiding the hard topics and actually inspiring people to study and find their own faith. I don't think, from my experience, I've not found a church that does anything better than that. Okay. But I do feel like here at Central we have groups that seem to close themselves off from new people.
So it gets back to the click stuff that we were talking about earlier. So how do we do? I mean, what's a good way to deal with that?
I mean, it's just got to be somebody's job to be on the lookout. New people, it's got to be their job. You have to have somebody set aside for it.
I'm thinking back to a podcast. Oh man, who was that with? I want to say Paul Sperling with Ministry League. That's actually part of his job is to go around and be looking for those new members and making sure that they feel welcomed and plugged in and part of the church at large, not just any group.
If you're in that group that eventually becomes closed off, I'm not saying that they're doing it intentionally or with ill intent. It's just, you get distracted by conversations that you're having, and you just start focusing on the people that you're talking to, and eventually you just forget. Yeah. You forget about the new person, or you didn't even see them walk in. Yeah. And then they come in, and then they feel like you're being rude or you're being judgmental by not accepting them. Yeah. And so you have to have somebody who's not involved in that group.
Yeah. So a specified member or group of members who are just inundating new people and just like magnets.
Yeah, and they'll see this new person come in and they'll be like, "Hey, how did you find this place? What's your background? Why did you choose UTC? Or if we're doing Central, what drew you to this church?" Mm-hmm. And find out about their personality, and then you'd be like, "Hey," go over to the click and be like, "Hey, this is Tommy. Yeah. And you guys like the same stuff. You guys should talk." There has to be somebody set aside because there's too many distractions.
As I'm processing this, and this is something that we've actually been talking about here, just how churches, a lot of churches, and this is not anything specific to any denomination. This is cross-denominational. Mm-hmm. We're in this system, and we're talking about decades and decades and decades of tradition built in, where we isolate our groups based on their age demographic. And it leads into this kind of thing. So, for example, you have a new college student walk in. Well, me as a middle-aged person, I'm not talking to that person. That's that's another college age group dealing with that, another college age student dealing with that. And what I have seen in the 12 years of campus ministry, the kids that stay plugged in are the kids who are coming from churches who didn't necessarily have that segregation based on age. I mean, they did have classes and stuff their own age, but more than anything, they were really doing intergenerational stuff. And they had programs that promoted cross-generations and cross-generational involvement and communication and activities, and they really pushed that. And so that's one of the things here that we're looking at becoming much better at. And I don't know if that resonates with your age group or not, but it kind of sounds like that's, one of the things that we can improve upon.
I mean, I don't think anything's wrong with, if you see a college student walk in, send in a college student. Mm-hmm. They're probably going to connect more than, a 30-year-old would. Yeah. But then there should be no fear of the 30-year-old to introduce himself also. Because when that doesn't happen, that new person feels like, oh, these old people think that they have this sort of moral or spiritual high ground, and like it's not worth coming down to me.
Yeah,
and I mean, definitely people feel that way, and so we should be aware of that, and we should never avoid going out of our way to talk to people in different groups. Yeah. But I don't see anything wrong with having a college class and then having a young professionals class, but because they're probably at different levels.
Sure.
It's not about in the class, though. It's about outside of the class and the intermingling there.
Right. And having those relationships that are taking place and being molded and worked on.
I mean, you can see at the CSC, like, not everybody's the same major there. They all have different specifics, different levels. Like, I'm an engineer, and so I mean, I've taken some quite advanced math classes, and then we have Robbie, who's a communications major, and he doesn't take any math classes. And we're at different levels in math, but that doesn't matter to us. Yeah. We are still great friends, and we love hanging out with each other, and there should be no difference between age outside of the classes.
Yeah. Jesus certainly did not have any barriers between anybody. So I think the good thoughts there. Jacob, this has been an interesting and enlightening conversation with you. I appreciate you agreeing to come and get drilled with some hard questions, and hopefully you weren't squirming too much.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right, so I always like the guest to close us out with a favorite passage of Scripture, and so I'm going to let you do that now.
I'm going to go with Romans chapter 5, verses. Can I do more than one verse? 6 through 8? Passage?
Yeah, you can.
Let me get there. Okay. For when we were still without strength, in due time Christ died for the ungodly. For scarcely for a righteous man will one die, yet perhaps for a good man someone would even dare to die. But God demonstrates his own love towards us, in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And right now, that is my personal favorite verse, because that verse has put the weight of Christ's love in a more understandable sense than any other verse I've read, where he loved to no benefit of himself at all.
Yeah. Great verse, great thoughts. So give us feedback. I always say this at the end of the show. If you like what you hear, click subscribe to our YouTube channel. Sponsorships are always available. Also, we've been picked up by Ministry League, so I'll give them a quick plug. Ministry League is an awesome app. It's got a lot of resources. You can find this podcast on Ministry League. Also, if you don't have a church home and you're in this Chattanooga area, consider Central Church of Christ, which is also the main sponsor of this show, located at 400 Vine Street. Come and check us out, worship with us, and see what I think is some really exciting things that are taking place right now. All right, so until our next podcast of The Line, the Way, and the War, love one another, be kind to one another, and remember, the Creator of the universe loves you so much that He gave up His only Son for you. Have a blessed day.